think on a data security perspective, that's for us the most important thing when we're talking about HeadNet and wireless networks within our properties. There's nothing scarier than you going into a hotel room, by the way, not a Marriott hotel room, but opening your computer and seeing somebody's iTunes library from the room next door, right?
Right.
Hotels are really interesting scenarios because we have properties that run casinos, and we run along with the very strict laws of Nevada casinos. We have properties that have thousands of rooms, and the unique challenge there is how do you get all of these unique guests on each one of those guest rooms and event space and public areas connected to the very same network, but on the same hand, not see each other, right? And this was very easy years ago to implement, where you can set up your firewall rules, you can set up your VLANs, your protections, and all of those. But then now we have a new challenge. The new challenge is when we're talking about guest room entertainment and we're talking about you being able to do everything you do at home in a hotel room, you're bringing your Apple TVs, you're bringing your Rokus, you're bringing all of your other appliances, which will require you to be able to interact with other devices within the same network. You want to be able to stream to the TV. You want to be able to stream to the speaker. How do you do that without opening your network enough that you would see the room next door? So this is part of the security challenges that we're facing today, and investing a lot of time to implement it the right way from the start. We want to make sure you're empowered to do the same things that you do in remote locations, but we need to do it right. You need to do it in a way that is secure, that follows all the payment card industry standards, that allows you to be able to isolate each one of those devices, but also interact with them.
So when my son travels for basketball, varsity basketball, and he tells me that somebody bought the Xbox and there's 4 guys sitting in a room playing Xbox all night before they go play basketball the next morning, that's not unusual?
That works great because there's a cable that gets out of the Xbox and connects right to the TV, right?
I thought it was pretty inventive. I'm not sure I want to be in the room next door. No, you're right. People have told me, people have come up to me at conferences and said, oh, I knew you were here because I saw your iPhone on the Wi-Fi list. I think actually if you look, you'll probably see Iain Gillott's iPhone as you can't link to it, but my Mac can. But people know I'm at conferences just by the fact I'm available on one of those lists. So it's interesting. So because you have an interesting challenge, is you've got operations in the buildings, you've got guests coming to the building, right? So you kind of a combination of what's going to happen in the commercial world with bring your own device and all those types of things. You're the precursor to this because you have that happening already, right?
Yeah, and we're very careful to be able to do that securely, right? So we use mobile device management tools, and we make sure that if we, at the same hand as we empower our associates to bring in their own devices and use the services that are available from our internal network, that we also do it in a way that is safe and secure and allows us to be ready to give them that access in a manner that won't disrupt the network.
Okay. Questions? Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
let me repeat the question. So, good question. So the question's around public safety. So we've been talking about security in the building. What do you do when public safety turns up, law enforcement, etc.? How do they communicate within the building? And then how do you communicate with them while they're en route, etc.? And I should tell you, you're wearing a Longhorns t-shirt. I'm from Austin, Texas. So it's been a rough few weeks though, hasn't it? Yeah, my wife's an Aggie, so she's a little happier, but yeah, it'll get better, don't worry. Yeah, football, by the way, the University of Texas, they really has a football team it's got a few classes kind of adjunct to the football team, and I'm not joking. So law enforcement, security, who wants to start? Alex?
I can start.
Yeah.
We have departments of what we refer to as loss prevention on each one of our hotels. We think of our departments of security as more than just security, so we try to prevent incidents before they happen. But we do share information with law enforcement on site, and we do that on site directly at the terminals where those are selected to be able to see that information. So we don't have free access to those systems along the network anywhere you are, and we reduce the access, especially externally. So we do take them to our facility, we bring them to the actual department where that can be seen, and we share them on site.
You know, and I think there's a couple aspects here that we see. Certainly making sure that you have the video that you can, whether bring law enforcement on site or be able to push. Oftentimes in a citywide surveillance network, the municipality is going to expect to have access to cameras, maybe not 100% of the time, but when there's an incident, that they're able to say, yes, now you need to drive this to our command center so we can see what's happening. But the other part of that is you need to make sure from a communication perspective that you have a public safety network in place for them in your facilities. Whether it's a full-blown DAS or if it's a smaller facility, a repeater, you do need to have that communication protocol for them so they can use their radios and interoperate, as well as they can certainly use the public network, the cellular network as well. But those are really the two things that we see. You can certainly push video to them, and then hopefully they have the capabilities to watch it wirelessly on their devices if they're using a mesh network of some sort as well.
Okay, Greg?
I don't have much to add to that, Ian. I would say that certainly having access to public safety would be a key driver for the placement of a smart building asset. So we're seeing more and more applications where that would be the primary driver for the placement of that type of infrastructure.
Okay, right. So as you notice, we're now back up to 4. Peter Gabriel has arrived. I'll explain the joke later on. The introduction was...
My 4-hour drive.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how is
my new iPhone said was half hour.
how is the traffic in Chicago?
I'm not moving here.
So, Cheryl O'Brien, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, what you do, and then we'll kind of going into the questions. But basically, what you do, what your organization does, and then the types of things you see enabled by smart buildings and all the things we've been talking about.
Okay. All right. Cheryl O'Brien, President and Founder, Technology Management Corporation, been in business for 30 years. And we do large venue. So we do Minnesota Vikings Stadium. We're doing major airports. We did the Olympics, Goa International, Orlando International Airport, projects like that.
Okay. Okay. So the last question was around public safety and what enablement there is basically as law enforcement comes on, EMS comes on site, and then also how they integrate with when they're traveling to a venue. So how do you see public safety fitting into your world? I mean, you mentioned the stadium, the Viking Stadium, for example. Has there been specific allowances or requests from public safety to enable that, or how does it fit into it?
Well, it's only $1 billion budget, so you know, money is short. I guess the biggest challenge that I see in designing all of the Wi-Fi for this is the handoff points. Obviously, when you're going to anything that holds 65,000 public, 85,000 for the Super Bowl, things like that, you have a situation where they actually want to grab the traveler way out, you know, like 20 miles out when they catch their commuter train or their commuter bus. And they want to bring them all the way in, and they want to watch the public safety all the way in the route. So as buses merge and public safety merges and they start to connect up to the city Wi-Fi systems, that's the big challenge right there. And it's the manufacturers and the installers that are really going to have to come up with some interesting solutions,
Right.
you know.
So what you're saying is my in-building experience or in-stadium experience actually starts when I get out of bed in the morning, the day of the game or whatever, and start thinking about Cowboys, Longhorns, etc.
Correct, correct. And there has to be a handoff from network to network to network. And if there's any voice involved, obviously that handoff has to be under 50 milliseconds.
Right.
So you have to hand it off all the way through till they walk in those great big doors and take their seat.
Okay, right. Good. Any questions? Okay, one down here. Okay, so the question was, outside of security, what's the next big applications that really enabled by wireless here, not and the smart building that you weren't seeing 5 to 10 years ago? What's been the big, the smart piece of it?
Yeah, I can mention two examples. The first one is building automation, right? So if you're looking at smart thermostats on each one of the rooms, that would know when somebody has walked into the room and lowered the set point, and to be able to control that thermostat remotely. We have mesh networks to do that. They're using protocols different than IP, but we do have networks that allow us to be able to set preferred temperature based on guest preference. We even go down to, when you're looking at Ritz-Carlton properties, we can have your preferences added to your profile, and as you merge from hotel to the next, as you would go into the room, that temperature could be set down to your preferred temperature. Another good example is door locks, and that goes back specifically to physical security, right? We also use mesh networks to be able to do remote door lock interrogations and control access to doors based on guests or hotel associates. So door locks and thermostats are good examples that we already use it and have been using it for years now.
What's the next thing you think you're looking at?
The next thing is really how to support and control and do it safely on you being able to share content to other endpoints on the network, aka TVs, right? How can you allow and empower guests to share their content with TVs and allow to import your HBO Go or your Netflix preferences or your YouTube channels and see that on the TV without having it being shared over the network with other devices or endpoints?
Right. Good. Larry?
I think one other area that plays into that controls piece, certainly building automation is a big part of it, but intelligent lighting and lighting controls is another big area. As people are retrofitting for LEDs, you can use that same wireless mesh network to talk about occupancy, to control the lights, to do things like daylight harvesting. And so whether it is going on a true building automation network or whether it's a separate lighting and sensor network, that's still being fought in the marketplace today. But I think that that's the next evolution for these networks.
Okay.
Yeah, we've seen some clients that have interest in actually using systems like RFID to actually track assets. So in certain types of manufacturing settings, they want to be able to track all of the assets, and they're using those types of systems to try to track those assets.
Right, good. Cheryl, you mentioned airports as well. So,
Well, yeah, there's a few
Yeah.
items. Tagging on temperature control, we have a client that has about 100 million square feet, and what they do is a lot of their locations are in the southern part where it's high humidity, and they even control if doors are left open and such, not just from a security standpoint, but from the standpoint of is a dew point of 92%, and there's 10 doors on hotel rooms that are open. So they'll then send security or guest services over and just gently, close doors and all of that sort of thing. But the other thing, two items. One, in healthcare, we're seeing a huge movement on healthcare where you have two items. You're tracking the doctors, the surgeons, the support nurse staff. You're also tracking the key elements needed for the surgery. So an example would be 5 helicopters just brought in a bunch of hunters in Seattle that were up in the mountains, and ironically enough, they were from Chicago. And so all of a sudden, many surgeons were needed. They ran into some bears. So many surgeons were needed at exactly the same time. All the support staff were needed for the same time, and then they needed to locate all the exact equipment, including blood transfusion and such.
Right.
So all of that converged on the wireless network and said, we're not just looking for an item, Cheryl stole the pen, it's more, I need the kidney transplant machine, I need the blood transfusion machine, and I need it right now. I need this surgeon, I need to know where this surgeon is. The other thing that we're finding that also relates to that is in large airports, which have a lot of square footage, we are now set such that you get off your plane, and with big data, we actually then say, this frequent flyer has just logged onto their iPhone, because that's the first thing people do when they start to taxi, and they like to eat at this, and this restaurant. The iPhone pops up and immediately says, by the way, you've got a connecting flight. If you order here, you go to your next gate, it will be ready for you. Give us your credit card. So it's actually driving revenue on one side, saving lives on the other, and saving utility bills on the other.
I like that one. I'll take that one. I go through too many airports, so. And it's not usually as you're taxiing, it may be a little bit before that, because those networks, they're higher in the sky. So I didn't say that. It's not being recorded, is it? No, good. Any other questions? There's one down here somewhere. I thought somebody's hand go up. No? No? People are waving. There we go. Sorry. Ambient intelligence? Okay. All right, so the question was, how does the Internet of Things play into all of this? How does ambient intelligence play into this? How does it develop over the next 5 years? And Cheryl, do you want to start this time?
Well, I think probably the internet is going to have the biggest play, and I think keeping the internet public and not letting it be controlled will have a huge influence on how Wi-Fi is able to grab items. So not necessarily that topic, but very related to it, on how people are going to be able to grab from all the different areas and utilize it well. And then I think that the deployment from the large networks into the smaller communities and such, that will be a huge help as it connects and meshes further and further. Okay. Greg?
Yeah, I think there will be some challenges for the folks that actually own buildings, that own and operate these types of systems, to deal with those changes. There will continue to be changes. There'll be more types of devices that need to and want to connect to these types of networks, and I think there'll be a lot of strain on the OEMs in the space to make it all work. I think there are a lot more compelling choices today than there were in this space 5 or 6 years ago. I have been in this space for longer than I care to admit, and there have been lots of changes. There are certainly better options available today than there were yesterday, but I think that as we continue to look at different types of connectivity, different types of devices needing those types of services, there will be a strain.
Okay.
I think when you look at the Internet of Things, that's going to drive this explosion of data demands. When you have a toothbrush that can connect to the Internet, and your microwave, and your refrigerator, and all these other devices in the consumer world, as well as in the commercial world. In the industrial space, we're seeing a big movement on the factory floor to connect those devices. So how do small cells play into that? Well, the first thing I would say is, and this was mentioned earlier, a true neutral host small cell doesn't exist today. Doing more than a dual band small cell is a bit of a struggle. So as small cells develop, I think there's certainly a play for them, but you need to have some additional capability, some additional development that takes place before they're going to be able to support the Internet of